chances are you have seen a stag in the wild before. If this encounter happens in a forest, more likely than not, the stag is aware of you sooner than you are aware of it. Depending on the species and your height, the first time you learn you're not alone is when you see the antlers roughly at, slightly below or above your eye level. But maybe the wind is carrying your scent in the direction away from the animal. And maybe it just happens to be feeding on some leaves higher up and stands up on its hind legs to do so. At that point, you see the antlers way above your eye level. But if it doesn't go back on all fours in a couple seconds, and God forbid, if the crown of antlers starts moving towards you, then what you're seeing in between the trees is not a stag. From this point, I could probably sell you an entire myth about something lurking in a forest far away, and the many tales some foreign culture has about said being. And in most cases, I'd be selling you a lie, because this fear of antlers utilized by so many movies today is not some sort of a primordial instinct. Chances are your ancestors were way more used to seeing antlers, deer and deer skulls than you. When I say antlerification, what I mean is the addition of antlers to mythological beings, clothing and rituals, to the point the wider public starts associating the latter with the former. Living thousands of kilometers away from North America, my first contact with the Wendigo was through horror movies made in Hollywood. For that reason, I automatically assumed that a Wendigo is a man-eating humanoid deer. I knew that it has something to do with Native American folklore, but why would I question the basics when all of the movies I watched agreed on roughly how it looks? It wasn't before antlerification made its way to Eastern Europe that I started asking why. Thanks to the popularity of the Witcher series, a lot of people in the West now know what is a Leshy, a sort of patron of the forest, whose regional variants are spread all throughout Eastern Europe. But contrary to its portrayal in The Witcher 3, the Leshy doesn't have antlers. In some depictions it has horns and some other goat-like traits, but that is most likely a connection to what Slavs called a chort, or chart, which is something distinct from the Leshy. Chort is a being that in some stories represents the devil, its servants or just a whimsical creature. When I think back to the tales I've been told as a kid, it's striking how much horns, not antlers, are prevalent. It's not just broader Slavic mythology, it's also our regional stories and, most importantly, horns are a sign of the devil in Christianity. Seems that our ancestors were more scared of goats than deer. In Czechia, the patron of the forest is not called Leshy, but Hejkal. In 2015, the Czechs tried making a horror movie about it inspired by the works of Karel Erben, one of their most important poets. It's called Lesapán, which means the Lord of the Forest. And to the rest of the world, it was advertised as Leshy. The artwork looked absolutely horrific, and this was right at the height of the antler mania. The version they chose for the actual movie is arguably way less scary, but the antlers stayed. And upon doing some research, turns out that it's an addition. Antlers are not commonly associated with the Hejkal. I started asking myself whether you can even sell a folk horror without something that resembles a Wendigo. And at that point I found out that even the Wendigo was a victim of antlerification. I am not sure when exactly did the Algonquian cannibal spirit start turning into a deer, but it goes back to at least the year 1910, when Blackwood wrote his story, The Wendigo. In 1995, the movie Frostbiter, The Wrath of the Wendigo, released with its own depiction of a skeletal, centaur-like being. It's in 2001 that we get to see the quote-unquote modern Wendigo for the first time. Larry Fessenden's The Wendigo is a pretty solid movie, though it might just be nostalgia. It follows a family of three going on a trip to upstate New York, running over a deer and getting stuck in the snow. Three hunters that were trying to hunt down the buck confront the father and get into an argument. One of them in particular acts like an asshole, but there isn't much the dad can do considering the hunters are armed and he is not. The Wendigo comes into the picture when the kid buys a figure in a thrift store and is portrayed much better here than in most other movies. It's a powerful spirit that takes the form of trees, the wind, as well as the antlered creature. Creative liberties are taken, but that's alright. At the end of the day, myth isn't something solid and shouldn't be treated as such. Most notably, the Wendigo in this movie is skewed by the little kid's imagination. As the hunter tries to kill the boy's father later on in the movie, the kid effectively sends the Wendigo after him. I can't speak for the Algonquians, but it feels more respectful to their folklore, given there wasn't much demand for Wendigo movies back then and the author was just genuinely inspired. I can and will speak for the Slavs when I say that this scene of the son putting his shoes on the sofa is terrifying. If my child did that, I would sell it into slavery. I could talk about a lot of movies and shows here. For instance, my favorite portrayal of a Wendigo-inspired theme are the first 2 seasons of Hannibal. But I'm saving Hannibal for when I make a video about a certain other story. Instead, I want to talk about a movie that inspired me to make this video in the first place. One of the greatest disappointments in horror cinema, which is a pretty impressive feat. A film so antlerified that even its name is just Antlers. Antlers opens with a shot of rural Oregon. The beautiful nature is contrasted with man-made industry, which is probably supposed to signal an environmental message of human footprint being a cancer on nature. Unfortunately, at least to me, all the industry looks really cool and adds a certain charm to the place, so it doesn't work on everyone. The story follows a family of 3, a widowed father and his 2 sons. Their dad is working in the mines, but he is not a miner. Instead, he's cooking meth, and the smell of crystal invites an unwanted guest. When the father and the little brother return home, it's apparent that they're sick. The symptoms include pain, chronic hunger that can only be partially satisfied with raw meat, and an Asmongold to Cyrax transformation. The father locks himself and his younger son in the attic, while Lucas, the older brother, is left scavenging for roadkill. Lucas is the highlight of the movie. It's difficult to find good child actors, but Jeremy T. Thomas plays Lucas brilliantly. I really did feel sorry for the kid. Malnourished, poor, bullied at school, yet still so determined to look after his sick relatives. The second main character, the teacher, is on the other hand one of the most insufferable protagonists I've ever seen. I don't feel like it's the fault of the actress, more so the writing is just really trash. She moved back to Oregon recently to live with her brother, who is the sheriff. She is dealing with her own trauma because she grew up with an abusive father. But this isn't a movie like The Ritual. Her trauma is actually not very important for the wider plot, and is there just because, I don't know, I guess we should feel bad for her. I'll play you a short scene, and you tell me if you feel any empathy towards the teacher.
I invited you in to have ice cream because I wanted to know if ice cream is your favorite vegetable. Because it's mine.
She starts feeling concerned for Lucas, who is attending her classes. She is worried that he might be also experiencing an abusive household. I have to give credit where credit is due. When she comes to his family's house, she actually stops when she hears the screams from the attic. Not long after, the teacher shares her worries with the principal, who decides to also investigate by herself. She hears the screams from the attic, she sees that it's locked by at least 3 locks to keep whatever is there inside, and she decides to go in anyway. Much has been said about horror movie characters being stupid. I hate the fact that to this day, some filmmakers still feel the need to continue the trope. If your character walks into any danger they see, completely oblivious to basic red flags, your movie cannot be scary. It's gonna be funny, but not funny enough for people to remember it in 2 years' time. Obviously, the principal gets eaten and the father transforms into what is supposed to be a Wendigo. The transformation scene, in which antlers start coming out of his mouth, is the coolest part of the movie. It really makes me sad that it was wasted on such a terrible story. Lucas lures his bully into the forest and lets his, now antlerified, father eat him. The police find both bodies, as well as one more a week earlier. A native local warns them that all signs point to a Wendigo. It isn't stupid to not believe in the paranormal, but it's very stupid to not call for backup, especially considering the police department has the strength of only 2 officers. The other officer, who notably isn't the sheriff and isn't the teacher's brother, and is just there to die, dies. The way in which he dies is that he arrives to the sheriff's house, hears the inhuman screams, and walks into the shed where they are coming from. The sheriff arrives soon after and sees that there is a dead body in the entrance of the shed. So he decides to follow him and also gets almost killed. The teacher, who was sheltering Lucas in the house, walks out and, you guessed it, also goes to the shed. Luckily for her, the Wendigo was there to pick up Lucas and is not interested in eating her. The whole family, that is the transformed father, the sick little brother and Lucas, is reunited in the meth lab. And the teacher goes to follow them. With a character design so cool, nothing can prepare the viewer to how terrible the climax of the movie is, because this monster can only attack by slowly swinging its arm. It's exactly like that one animation gargoyles have in Skyrim. The reach of the Wendigo is so catastrophically bad that it can't land a single hit. If your striking is this bad, you should genuinely stop and only focus on grappling. So it's killed by a pocket knife and the teacher extracts the heart. In what is supposed to be an emotional scene, she proceeds to kill the little brother, who is starting to transform. The film ends with a shot of the sheriff, the teacher and Lucas at a lake. They seem like a happy family, until it's revealed that the sheriff has the disease. Why he and not the teacher who literally touched the heart of the corruption, we'll never know. A thing I notice here is that most of the victims weren't actually eaten. The unsatisfiable appetite is not really represented here. Unless, and I noticed this theme in a few Wendigo movies at this point, the real Wendigo is industrial civilization and its endless hunger for resources. I'm not Algonquian, so I can't act offended at my myths being reshaped by Hollywood until only the name remains. But I can say that this movie fucking sucks. It's terrible. What was this video about again? Oh yeah, antlers. Antlers are scary.